Welcome back to Purpose-Driven Church for Unificationists. We are starting chapter 19, turning members into ministers, and I am, pretty excited. Look at that, we are almost done with the book. It's crazy. So it's kind of the final stretch. I'd say probably 7 or 8 more days. We'll see. But this section is really interesting. This is third base on the baseball diamond for the life development education process that they have, and this is taking a committed growing member to the next level, which is helping them to become a minister in their own right. So he starts off by just putting some context around the situation in many churches, basically talking about how many churches have a very small percentage of people who are really active in ministry. He says the designation active member in most churches means those who attend regularly and financially support the church. Not much more is expected, but God has far greater expectations for every Christian, and I believe every unificationist. He expects every person to use his or her gifts and talents in ministry. If we can ever awaken and unleash the massive talent, resources, creativity, and energy lying dormant in the typical local church, we will explode with growth at an unprecedented rate. A Gallup survey discovered that only 10% of American church members are active in any kind of personal ministry, and that 50% of all church members have no interest in serving in any ministry. However, the encouraging news is that Gallup uncovered that 40% of all members have expressed an interest in having a ministry, but they have never been asked if they don't know how. Anyway, he goes on to talk about this more and talk about finding talent, and he's sharing this story about how one time he was talking with some people about creating a video, and somebody was like, hey, why don't you ask this person? And he went and talked with this person. Turned out that she was the chief video production director for Walt Disney, and having a big church and many people who can kind of fit in with the crowd, many times talent can go undiscovered. But he goes on to say that your church will never be any stronger than its core of lay ministers who carry out the various ministries of the church. Members, every church needs an intentional, well-planned system for uncovering, mobilizing, and supporting the giftedness of its members. You must set up a process to lead people to deeper commitment and greater service to Christ. One that will move your members from the committed circle into your core of lay ministers. Most evangelical churches believe in the concept that every member is a minister. Many even give it a major emphasis in their preaching and teaching. Still, most members do nothing but attend and give. What does it take to turn an audience into an army? How do you transform spectators into participators? In this chapter, I want to explain the system we set up to equip, empower, and release our members from ministry. So the heading for this part is Teach the Biblical Basis for Every Member Ministry. People always need to know the why before you teach them how. Invest time in teaching your members a biblical basis for lay ministry. So what he's saying is you have to really emphasize and teach thoroughly why it's important for every member to have their own ministry. In fact, you should never stop teaching on the importance of every Christian having a ministry. So he's got these 4 pillars of lay ministry that every church is built on. So one is that every believer is a minister. That doesn't mean that every believer is a pastor, but every believer is called into ministry. God calls all believers to minister to the world and the church. Service in the body isn't optional for believers. In God's army, there are no volunteers. He's drafted us all into service. To be a Christian is to be like Jesus. He said, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." So if we're really trying to mold ourselves into a Christ-like character, which is the goal, which, as he mentioned before, there's no reason to shoot for less, then this is a part of that. And same for us. He says service and giving are the defining characteristics of the Christ-like lifestyle expected of every believer. And of course that's not the same as being courteous and being having good manners, but actively finding a way to apply my gifts and talents in a way that really benefits other people. So he says at Saddleback we teach that every Christian is created for ministry, saved for ministry, called into ministry, gifted for ministry, authorized for ministry, commanded to ministry, to minister, to be prepared for ministry, needed for ministry, and accountable for ministry, and will be rewarded according to his or her ministry. Second is that every ministry is important. There are no little people in the body of Christ, and there are no insignificant ministries. Every ministry is important. Third is that we are dependent on each other. Not only is every ministry important, every ministry is also intertwined with all the others. No ministry is independent of the others. Since no single ministry can accomplish all the church is called to do, we must depend on and cooperate with each other. Like a jigsaw puzzle, each piece is required to complete the picture. You'll always notice the missing piece first. When one part of your body malfunctions, the other parts don't work as well. One of the missing components in the contemporary church is this understanding of interdependence. We must work together. Our culture's preoccupation with biblical individualism and independence must be replaced with the biblical concepts of interdependence and mutuality. And lastly, ministry is the expression of my shape. So at Saddleback, they use this acronym, SHAPE. And what it essentially comes down to is that if you look at nature, certain animals have certain abilities, and their role in nature is defined by the abilities that they have, their ability to run, or their ability to burrow underground, or swim, or whatever. This is a certain God-given ability that they were designed with, and it shapes their existence. And human beings are the same way. We're all uniquely designed or shaped by God to do certain things. And he just goes on to say that wise stewardship of your life begins by understanding your shape. You are unique, wonderfully complex, a composite of many different factors. What God made you to be determines what he intends for you to do. Your ministry is determined by your makeup. If you don't understand your shape, you end up doing things that God never intended or designed you to do. When your gifts don't match the role you play in life, you feel like a square peg in a round hole. This is frustrating, both to you and to others. Not only does it produce limited results, it is also an enormous waste of your talents, time, and energy. God is consistent in his plans for our lives. He would not give each of us an inborn abilities, temperaments, talents, spiritual gifts, and life experience and then not use them. By identifying and understanding the 5 shape factors, you can discover God's will for our lives, the unique way he intends for each of us to serve him. When it comes to ministry, your function flows out of the way God formed you. So that's all for today. Sorry I went a little longer than usual, but tomorrow we'll start looking at the different aspects of your shape. Thank you. See you then.